This is just so outrageous, is it not?
It's when you appreciate what they did. And they took they turned what would otherwise been a misdemeanor bookkeeping error, a time-barred misdemeanor, into a 34-count felony charge indictment conviction to then give an unconditional discharge just so that they could call him a convicted felon. It was a scam from the beginning. The judge, look, the only reason he gave the unconditional discharge is because any other sanction would have been obviously immediately appealed or unenforceable because Trump takes office in a week and a half. And so they get that header. The only question now is these scoundrels, what do they do with it? Do they go for an impeachment 3.0 now that they actually have a crime to claim is the high crime and misdemeanor to go impeach him a third time? But it's corruption of the highest order. And you pointed it out. The audacity of them to accuse Trump of being the one who discredited the legal system. These people are Darvo narcissists. Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. The victimizers pretending to be the victims and pretending that the victim is the one who caused the distrust in the system when it's everything that they have done from day one to make people realize the legal system, at least in New York, is so corrupt. You got to get your stuff and pack up and leave because nobody is safe in New York.
First of all, I love how you pronounce misdemeanor, like it's a contestant in one of Trump's beauty contests.
A misdemeanor sounds like I'm misgendering the misdemeanor. But
misdemeanor sounds like a feminist demeanor contestant.
I think it's the correct way of doing it. No, but it was a time-barred misdemeanor at worst. And they don't even know what they predicated the felony predicate acts on. Like, you asked the jury, what did you convict him on? I don't know. It was he bookkeeping error. How did you bump it up to a felony? Yeah, but when the judge said you don't even have to identify which of the underlying felonies this predicate act was based on, you know that you're dealing with an outcome-driven process and not a justice-driven process. I just thought that judge, in as much as he's an idiot, a totally corrupt hack, whose daughter, worth mentioning every time we talk about him, his daughter was fundraising off of this prosecution, that discredits the system. But I thought he had a little bit more savvy to say, all right, after the Supreme Court came down and said you can't admit evidence that is adduced from presidential acts, he would say, okay, I've got to vacate the verdict and blame the Supreme Court. No.
Yeah, because we definitely did that.
Without a question. And in his ruling, he says, look, none of the evidence related to presidential acts because it was all in furtherance of a private act of fraud. Bullcrap. But even if it were, he says the error would be harmless because of the overwhelming evidence of guilt. I mean, this is communist level, find me the man, I will find you the crime, presumption of guilt, not innocence. But I thought he would have the good sense to say, okay, I can vacate this verdict, save my own face on appeal because it will get overturned on appeal. I agree with you on that, and blame the Supreme Court. No. He went full throttle, and Amy Coney Barrett, the turncoat that Robert Barnes on our show Sunday night warned about, she was the turncoat. And they say because this corrupt hack of a judge undertook informally not to impose a prison sentence, we'll go ahead and allow the sentencing. He could have given Trump money in that sentence, and they should not have allowed the judge to proceed with the sentencing. I agree.
The Supreme Court should have stepped in here to say this is not going to happen. We just issued a ruling on presidential immunity. We just issued a ruling saying that you can't even use evidence of a president's official conduct against him in a criminal trial, which was definitely done in this case. And we are staying this proceeding until we are able to handle the appeal or until post-presidency, in which case it can follow the normal course.
Yeah, and not just that also. And shame on you, Mershon, for not respecting our Supreme Court ruling. This is a Supreme Court, at least with Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, who have no respect for their own rulings. And they've made that, public now. They issued a ruling. It said, presidential immunity for core constitutional acts, presumption of immunity for in the middle acts, and no immunity for personal acts, but you cannot adduce as evidence that was adduced as presidential conduct, which correspondence with chief of staff and press secretary obviously was on its face. And so what they basically said is, we have no respect for our rulings either. Go ahead, Mershon, and take a judicial dump on our ruling and go ahead with your sentencing because you've undertaken not to jail him. We'll let you do it. They have discredited themselves, and we see, unfortunately, the true colors of Amy Coney Barrett.
I'm worried about her. She's a little squishy, and it's concerning. I'll tell you, just like as a female who leans right, I'm kind of sick of like the female conservatives who get appointed to the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, now Amy Coney Barrett, like being too squishy. Why can't we just get like just Judge Aileen Cannon down in Florida. Get a female Alito on there. Get somebody with some, rhetorical balls who will hold as fiercely to conservative principles in the judiciary as the left wing does, as Elena Kagan does to the liberal principles. Why are the women so squishy when they get up there on the right?
Well, Roberts is squishy as well, so who knows how he identifies. But the bottom line, and she's young, she's there for a long time. But you imagine the rationale. They said, yeah, we issued this ruling that the evidence was inadmissible but because the judge announced his intention not to jail, we'll let him go through his sentencing. No, the judge weird. Desecrated. Yeah, the judge desecrated the ruling of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, we don't really care. That's what it's worth. And now you get your convicted felon title, so you can do Lord knows what with. I do wonder.
But that's an interesting. Okay, let's talk about that. You raise an interesting point, as you always do, Viva. Is it more than just the label? Do you think the next move, because here we are, January 10th, we got 10 days until the inauguration. Do you think they actually do try yet another maneuver of insurrectionist, or I don't know what they're going to say, but they've done a lot of legal gymnastics to try to get him and stop him from taking the oath.
Well, Megyn, remember the legal gymnastics. Back in impeachment 1.0, that was the quid pro quo, where Democrat, left-leaning, lawless lawyers and members of Congress said, we don't even need a crime to impeach. It's a purely political process. We can impeach him for the color of his tie. And that was to get around the fact that there was no crime committed with that quid pro quo conversation. Second time, phone call. The perfect phone call. There was no crime there. And so they had to say, well, impeachment, sure, it says for other high crimes and misdemeanors, but it's a political process. He doesn't actually have to commit a crime. That's what they said in 1.0. In 2.0, for the insurrection, they then had, at least on its face, on paper, a crime. Now they have a confirmed crime, a convicted felon. So now they don't have to make the argument, oh, it's not a political process. This is now a judicial one. We've got the convicted felon status, so we can go for impeachment 3.0 because we can now point to the actual crime upon which this impeachment 3.0 might be based. They are that stupid and that kamikaze reckless in their pursuit of opposing Trump. Jamie Raskin, who was infamously caught on that mic saying, we might have to declare civil war conditions when we disqualify Trump because of the insurrection clause. Well, Supreme Court came down 9-0 and said, no, you can't do that. So let's find another way to do it. Either impeach him before he takes office or impeach him right after he takes office. I don't think there's the political will to do it or the public support to tolerate it, but they're doing something. You're dealing with scoundrel scheme artists. And the only question is, what are they scheming about now behind closed doors? This is one indication of what they could do with this convicted felon, because I think it is a little bit more than just the title for the next 10 days.
Because, they don't control the House, and they're not going to control the House. They didn't before, and they don't in the new Congress. And so they can't impeach him. They don't have the votes to impeach him. And they certainly don't, now they don't control the Senate either. So they're not going to be able to, even in some weird world in which the House lost its mind and impeached Trump, they could never get a conviction. So I don't know that the move is political in the body of Congress, or if there's some legal maneuver in a court they still think they could pull off. That
was another thing I'm wondering. When Raskin comes out and says, we got to disqualify him for insurrection, maybe they're going to try something to, they had to certify the Electoral College results because they didn't get the conviction in time for that. Maybe they try to disqualify him now for being a convicted felon. It's settled law, but settled law has never stopped them from trying. So they're definitely going to try something else. The only question is what. And for
can we talk about on this front? They are trying to get the Jack Smith report of just how bad Trump was. He owes this report to Joe Biden or to Merrick Garland. And Trump has so far successfully stopped that report from getting released. He's like, these cases have been dismissed, so just stop. But there is some saber rattling that he's going to submit it, and we're going like that. Now you're back in the insurrection lane.
Yep.
And, a possible legal challenge on, no. Just because the case got thrown out doesn't mean he's not an insurrectionist who is not capable of taking office.
Well, especially since the impeachment process, it doesn't require a conviction of a high crime. It just requires one to allegedly have been committed. And so they say, sure, it got tossed at the court level, but this report shows insurrection-y behavior. It's so preposterous and unlawful and lawless that they want to release portions of a report that was produced in the context of charges that should never have been brought, that themselves were predicated on evidence that was falsified by the FBI, that raided with authorization to use lethal force the former president and leading presidential candidate at the time. This is, I don't know if it's communist is the right word, but it is lawlessness of the highest order. The people who need to be behind bars and need to be tried, convicted, and jailed are the Jack Smiths of the world, are the Merrick Garlands of the world, are the Mayorkas, just because I dislike him as well, but are the Raskins of the world, the ones who publicly announce. After a fair trial, they would get, in any realm of a lawful universe, convicted. But Jack Smith, the hired mercenary who was unlawfully appointed from the get-go, Citizen Jack Smith, now wants to release portions of a report because Merrick Garland says it's the interest of the public's best interest to see portions of a report that was prepared in a bogus, lawless prosecution. Garland is a criminal as well, in my humble opinion. Hashtag no defamation. I believe the man is a criminal, and he's deliberately trying to undermine justice and doing everything he can to lay whatever groundwork they can do to either frustrate, attempt another impeachment. Hey, go a third time. They broke the glass once and twice. They've turned the impeachment process into Halloween candy. Just go for a third time.
For those of us holding our breath for the past several months, watching the politics of this nation, we can finally exhale a bit. Work can finally be done on the major issues this country's facing. One of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, we're broke. And that debt that we have is a house of cards that cannot be quickly dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You might want to diversify your savings. This is why I want you to know about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, out of our president's control for that matter. So it can be really important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit. Plus, right now, you will receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle coin for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.